Here. All right, we're live. Can I get a thumbs up in the chat room? Thumbs up if you are with your camera open. Just give me a quick thumbs up to let me know everything is working right. All right, here we go. Yep, I see the thumbs up coming through and my camera looks like it's working. So let me first of all introduce myself, or actually introduce the talk, because we're going to jump into formal introductions. But today's topic is hosted by the Career Center here at CodePath. And our topic at hand today is going to be technical interviewing game day preparation with me, Bobby D. Bobby Dorless, Bobby D. You'll eventually find out who I am as we continue this conversation here. All right, so let me get my screen started sharing. I do and am looking for a volunteer. So while I'm working on my screen, if you would like to volunteer, I will have a prize at the end for you. But this person will volunteer to hopefully help me queue up questions that people have, and also kind of help me, moderate this event here today. So if you would like to be of assistance, raise your hand and definitely come up here on stage. No volunteers?
I gotcha.
Who's that? Kevin?
Yeah.
Awesome, Kevin. And Kevin's brave enough to have the camera on, so I really appreciate you. So Kevin, definitely afterwards, we'll chat up some more, but we're going to kick the talk off right now. So thank you so much, Kevin. All right. So Kevin, if anybody has any questions, just queue them up, and definitely interject if you feel like you need to, if there's questions queuing up. All right. So today's conversation is about technical interviewing game day preparation. Technical interviewing is a skill set that I've developed over the years. And as you'll see, as I start to tell you a little bit about my story, I actually taught technical interviewing at really, large companies, and definitely have a different perspective of how to get you prepared, especially for game day. Now, today's agenda, we'll go over some introductions of myself. And then we're going to jump right into the topic at hand, which is technical interview and game day preparation. And there's going to be a space for you to ask any questions that you have at the end, either through the chat, which is Kevin's going to hold me down. I appreciate you. And or you can come up on stage afterwards and definitely turn on your camera and ask your question. Remember, I'm here as a resource, and I definitely want to be as much useful to you as possible as you're getting ready for this field of technology and engineering. But who am I? All right, it's a really good question. And definitely you can see that I have it written down there, Bobby Dorless, and I'm the technical career coach for this semester with ICP and past semesters and cohorts that may also be joining too. I've been in the field of engineering and technology for about 20 years now. My skill sets range from systems engineering and software engineering. And I'm actually a founder of a real cool company. It's a nonprofit tech company. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but it's titled or called the Tech Hustle. But while here at CodePath, I'm providing support for anyone that's looking to level up in the skill set of interviewing, where I can provide mock interviewing and also just give you some career advice in the process too. Now, in terms of the technical side, because I mentioned 20 years, so on and so forth, I actually work for a really cool social media company, and I just left them probably about 6 months to a year ago to pursue this opportunity here to speak to you all more frequently and also give some of this knowledge that I gained over the years. Is I work for the Little Bluebird company, and today it's actually been in the news as of late. It sounds like an acquisition is about to happen. I don't know what's going on, but I'm on the sideline nowadays, but I really enjoyed my time working at that company called Twitter, and definitely can provide a perspective of how to get into those type of positions at companies that are FANG companies as such. So what skill sets do I bring to the table? I mentioned that I'm a systems engineer, but I'm also a software engineer. As a systems engineer, I know how computers work from the inside all the way up to the operating system and servicing things on the internet to writing code. One of my mantras is automating myself out of a job. And my 3 most proficient languages is Python being number 1, Golang, which is a very powerful language, and Bash. I mean, I'm always at the command line, always at the terminal, and Bash has always been a foundational programming language to learn, especially if you're pursuing systems engineering. But it's not about me today, and it's definitely not about my past experience. It's really about getting ready for game day preparation. Now, this right here is an example of receiving that email that you've been waiting for from a company that you either have applied for a job at, or you didn't even know that they were looking for you. And they found you because they sent out an email saying, we've scheduled an interview for a system software engineering position. How does that feel? And one of the emotions that I want to make sure that you're aware of is that you should feel joyful. you should feel excited. I know it's nerve-wracking. I know it could be like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm ready. We're going to cover things for you to start getting prepared so you can take away those type of feelings and feel like, yes, I get to go to bat. I get to go show off some of my skill sets. And what I really want is an opportunity to intern or have a full-time position at a technical company. So just remember that mindset feeling when you receive this email, and definitely feel yourself in that situation. But we're here to get focused and getting ready for the preparation of game day. Now, when I think of breaking down how I get prepared for interviewing and just the mindset that I really make sure that I'm on is I really need to start preparing for interviewing, um, hopefully a few weeks out, and taking certain steps so that I can feel joyful on that day that we're really trying to, get celebratory and get in the right mindset and frequency, is putting in the work and preparing. So one of the things that I'm going to outline are a few things that I use in terms of steps, at least 2 weeks out to prepare for a job. And if it's shorter than that, you can definitely shrink these steps down to apply, but they have been very resourceful for me to build my confidence and get me ready for that opportunity to go to bat and showcase my skill set as an engineer. So we're going to talk about what it feels like to get ready for 2 weeks out, 1 week to go, and then game day itself. We'll also have a slide at the end to talk about post-game, because after a game, you got to review and evaluate your performance, but also learn from it, which you're going to learn in a few minutes from now. So let's talk about what it feels like, or what are some of the things and steps that I take when I'm 2 weeks out. One of the things that I really spend time on, and I hope you do also, especially if you're finding companies that are places that you've dreamt of working at, and or companies that you don't know anything about, but they're interested in you, is start your research. Really researching the company, but also researching the job description. Imagine you researching a job or thinking that you're applying for one job, and when you read a job description, you're way off. Make sure you spend time doing research to read the job descriptions. And what I want you to focus in on is the areas that you feel like you're not as proficient in. Now, also not just researching the job, but researching the company. Like, is this a company that I really want to work for? I know this is my first time, getting a tech interview and a job. I mean, I'm going to take anything, but is it really the job and company that I want to work for? And what type of practices and what type of things are out there in terms of the experience of working there? This is the second bullet that I have, which is not the bullet on the screen, but mentally just reviewing online feedback, is using your resources to find out more information about these companies, right? I know that there's Glassdoor out there, and definitely we're talking about our peer groups, but there's opportunities for you to find more information about these companies, specifically around engineering, especially if you're applying for an engineering position, is look for engineering content and publications that they've released, specifically around engineering blog posts. Before I apply for a job, I'm on their engineering blog posts looking like, oh man, they're really killing it. Or man, I could provide value to some of the challenges that they mentioned, and definitely take an opportunity to look at what work they've published publicly. The other cool thing is that we work and develop in a world that we like to do things in an open source environment. So go check out the company's GitHub page. They may have some projects that interest you or enlightens you on some of their practices that they actually have as engineers. Because if you didn't know, especially the companies that are transparent and they publish their code externally, they're literally showing you how they do internal development. And why not follow along and find out more about those type of interactions that you can have via like a GitHub repo, checking out their code. Now, the next bullet point I have here, and this is the one that I'm so grateful to mention, as you all are all a part of the CodePath family here, is that you should also be reaching out to your community. 2 weeks, oh man, I got an email from XYZ company. Let me go see if I know anybody in my LinkedIn circle or connect that work there or know somebody there, right? Use LinkedIn and your resources in terms of your network to its full potential by reaching out to your community. And guess what? You're part of the CodePath family, as I mentioned. Reach out to the CodePath peer groups that you have. I know there's a lot of cohorts that you may have never met before, but becoming and going through this semester, you have a new community that you can reach out to. Hey, I don't know if anybody else has ever had a chance to work or apply for a job or interview at a company called XYZ. Do y'all have any feedback? Imagine how many people have already had the experience that you're about to gear up to go through, and they can give you the inside scoop. This is one of the most valuable things, because if you think about your opportunity to shoot your shot, if somebody shows you where the bucket is, you're increasing your possibilities, right? So definitely reach out to your community. The next thing that I like to do 2 weeks out is really doing a self-assessment. Now, the reason why I'm saying self-assessment is that you all have been very active in your CodePath lessons and ICP program. But imagine if you take a week off, 2 weeks off, a month off, right? I know we say code every day, but hey, I got classwork, I got life, I got a job. That's what I mean by self-assessment. Are you as active as you were when you were in the CodePath program, or active as you were when you were in school or preparing for a job? And self-assessment is like being truthful to yourself. Like, I know I set the bar here. I know I can make it, but I feel like I'm right here. I need to close this gap, and embracing that and understanding what you have to do to move in the right direction, or closing that gap. Excuse me. Now, if you are actively programming every day, lead code, hacker rank, and any type of exercise that they have out there, oh, you know you're ready to go. But in general, do a self-assessment so you can evaluate where you're at. And if you're not coding already, start coding. Start at the lowest level at lead code, dial it down a little bit. Start the level that's appropriate to you. If you haven't touched the keyboard for a while, or you haven't really, studied algorithm data structures, work your way up. But depending on how far back you are, that means you need to put in work, right? You know where you have to get to be able to shoot that shot and make the bucket, but are you there now? And that's where that self-assessment comes into play. The last thing I want to mention is that one of the cool things about being a part of CodePath is you have access to people like me to do mock interviewing. By 2 weeks out, I'm already looking at my schedule to possibly schedule a mock interview at least a week before the interview. This is the time for you to jump on any organization that offers mock interviewing, and then utilizing that resources as quickly as possible, because you need to make sure you keep those knives sharpened. And your main goal is to understand and take the feedback that you can get to make a more successful attempt at the interview, right? But I know I mentioned coding, and the thing is that I also want to mention that it's not just coding that you need to start getting prepared for. A lot of you all are going to be enlightened that there are other skills that you need to continue to develop, so that you can be considered for positions as software engineers in these companies. But it's not just coding. Interpersonal skills, soft skills, behavioral skills, and really spending time to review them and refreshing your memory on, hey, I remember this time that this thing happened. If they ask me a question, especially in the behavioral section, that's the one that I'm going to answer right away. Or, hey, at the end of the interview, they usually give me a space for me to ask a question. Let me start composing list of things that I want to know about the company, so that when that question or that space is provided, I'm right there ready to go. And in general, what I just want to emphasize is that don't think that interviewing is just about coding. Yes, we want to see how proficient you are. We want to see how you got to this answer, and or how you went down the wrong way. But these are things that I also talk more about, especially in one-on-one sessions. So definitely feel free to get on my calendar for us to dive even more into it. But one thing that I want us to really start to think about is that 2 weeks out, you're getting feedback from your peers. You're starting to get connected with them. You're starting to do your research and know, hey, this is the company that I possibly want to work for, and they have some really cool projects that I can relate to. And definitely, I'm starting to sharpen my skills as a software developer. But hey, I'm about a week out, and what else do I need to start reviewing to kind of like ensure that I'm making that shot and being more consistent in the way that I'm preparing for this next conversation. Now, when I think about a week out or a 1 week to go, this is really crunch time. Crunch time in the sense of I'm really starting to put together the ideas of how I am going to continue to practice these specific skill sets, but also start to refresh my memory on a lot of things. One of the things that you're going to have an opportunity, especially when you start to do mock interviewing, is to review your past feedback. Now, when I say past feedback is you went to a mock interview, they said, hey, you need to work on X, Y, and Z. That's feedback, right? You go to another mock interview, they tell you 2 different letters. That's feedback. That's meant for you before you go into your next round of interviewing. I need to ensure that I'm at a certain proficient level so that I don't have that same feedback at an interview. But the other cool thing that I hope you all take full advantage of, especially if you're doing more than one interview, is my game day preparation a week out is I'm looking at all the things that I documented and all the research that I've done for interviews that I had before this one. An example. So let's say that I'm about to go interview at a startup, right? I have a doc of the 5 interviews that I had before because I interviewed at Amazon, they said no. I interviewed at Google, they said no. I interviewed at JP Morgan Chase, they said, yeah, but then they said no. And now I'm up to bat to interview at this next place. So what do? I go look at all the things I documented in those past interviews, and I use that as a foundation for me to start to prepare for the interview that's coming up this week. From these are the type of questions they asked. Was my response. I said that response, but I didn't really feel confident about it. Let me start to practice and think about a different type of response. Feedback from my resume. It's like, hey, you have these bullet points about a project that you worked on, but I don't have that much detail. Working on that feedback and really just taking your past experiences from jobs, interviews, mock interviews, feedback from your resume, and really start to review them and ensure that you're not making those same mistakes. And that's what it really comes down to. I'm so excited to talk about this. I'm almost stumbling on my words. The next thing I want to say is limit your daily exercise. So the thing is that as an athlete, you usually find out that they push hard on the off season, like crazy in terms of workouts, training, body and health maintenance. Like you find that when it's time for game day or a few days for game day, they're not actively out there pushing their bodies to its limit. You are more or less just letting everything that you've been working on that week prior to settle in. But you still need to wake up in the morning and exercise, right? Exercise by doing a coding exercise. It doesn't have to be the most difficult one. You don't have to spend 5 hours trying to figure it out. By this time, you've already started to develop the skill sets to be proficient. It just depends on the question that they ask. And this is an opportunity for you also to mock and play around with behavior. Like I told you about how the questions that they asked in previous interviews, why don't you just start to practice those exercises just like somebody asked you that question? So Bobby, tell me the time that you ran into a situation where you could not resolve it with your peers and you had to go with something. Yeah, I'm talking about reenacting and playing just like that so that you can get yourself into that mindset and continue to practice these skill sets daily basis, but not doing it crazy. I probably should have put in there like maybe an hour to 2 hour limit. And then the last thing I want to mention there is reread your resume. Now, I put this there and I know some people may be like, what do they mean by reread your resume? But imagine if I was the first one evaluating you as an engineer. The only thing I have as a reference point is your resume. All the things that I'm going to be looking for you to provide more context about, especially the project that said something about a shell and you saved the company about this type of, like, I want to make sure that when I have a conversation, we cover these things inside this resume. Imagine if you just been drifting off, forgot what you wrote in your resume, and that's what they're expecting. At least reread your resume and familiarize yourself with the things you brought up as highlights and bullet points. Oh, when I worked on this project, I did X, Y, Z, this, and that. You know what? When I practice my behavior, I'm going to make sure I mention these type of things when I respond to the interviewer, and definitely take advantage of what they know about me, which is written in my resume. So please read your resume. There's too many times I've interviewed candidates and asked them a question about the resume, and then they give me that look like, how did you know that? It's written right here. All right, now. So the next thing is just getting ready. Like, imagine you've done 2 weeks of preparation. You're down to the 1 week ready to go. It's like, how much more preparation should you have? Or how much more crunching should you get to? Or how much more crunch time should you put in? Or how much more lead codes or hacker rank should you do? In my professional opinion, game day, your mindset is on something totally different. Your mindset is not, hey, let me go and try to write this code. My mindset is on, let me review my game plan. Let me just go through my mindset on, if they ask me these type of questions, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I did the research. The company has a new blog post. Let me go read that. Let me just take away the burden that you may feel you have to get at the keyboard and constantly going at it until they say, hey, we're ready to interview. you're not going to be in the right mindset for you to be able to be successful. Because the next thing is I just want you to no more studying. Like if there's a point, it's like, all right, I'm done reading. I'm done looking into the company. I'm done doing lead code. I'm done doing HackerRank. I'm just going to go to bed. And this is where you have to be confident in yourself, because you know you put in the work 2 weeks prior, up to 1 week prior, right? If you didn't, obviously you see the results. I have to spend more time trying to get to where I got to go. But if you put the practice and put the work in, you can really get to that mindset where, hey, I don't need any more. I'm ready to go. And then the last thing I just want you to just embrace is like, get into the right frequency. Like I had a mentee ask me, Bobby, like, how do you really like that last hour before your interview? How do you really get ready? And I was like, you know what? That's a really good question. You know what I do? I actually turn my lights off in my office. Everything gets dim and I turn the music on and I turn it loud and I'm just listening and just feeling that frequency, feeling that vibe, not thinking about, oh, they're going to ask me this question. No, I don't know this thing. Oh, no, I'm really just in the right mindset so that all I know is when I get online or I get in person with this person that's interviewing me, I'm just going to be myself and I'm not going to let anything take me off from being in this right groove, because emotions is going to help you reduce that anxiety, like feeling happy, feeling joyful, listening to the rhythm. It changes your frequency so that, yeah, you're about to go deal with something challenging, but you know what? I'm ready because I put in the practice and I'm ready just to reset my frequency. So keep that in mind. And definitely when I send out this link here, I want you to check out the link that I have there, but it's really just changing your mindset and getting ready to go into the game. All right. Now, the last thing that I want to say about just preparing for interviewing or interviewing in general in this industry is that all of those steps that I mentioned, they're pre-game, they're day of, there are things that you can do specifically to make yourself more successful at shooting your attempt to get a job, right? But the other thing that I want you also to remember is that there's always an opportunity for you to improve. Post-game is documenting, writing down, remembering how and what I said or what the interviewer asked. Because remember, my next interview, even if I don't get this one, I'm getting myself prepared. Because the other thing that I'm going to mention is that you should be interviewing all the time, even when you have a job. Now, I'll cover the post-game recommendation, but I also want to add something about interviewing at least once a year. But post-game is really documenting as much as you can so that you can add it to your portfolio of steps that you need to take before your next interview, regardless of the outcome. I have a post-game doc. And I can share out the template. I didn't get a chance to put it in a slide, but it actually has all my interviews that I've ever had from when I actually picked up the skill set because somebody taught it to me. But in my doc, it really gives me a starting point for me to say, all right, this is the type of position I'm going to interview. When I interviewed for that position, they asked me these 3 questions. When I interviewed for that position, they asked me these 4 questions. When I interviewed for this position, the one that we're talking about today, I'm going to write it down and take notes so I can review those and have post-game notes. Now, I mentioned something about interviewing at least once a year, especially when you're in the industry. Interviewing is a skill that you have to keep and maintain. When I say do self-assessment to really evaluate yourself, I know my self-assessment is terrible. I need at least 3 weeks in advance to start to get ready to get in the right mindset. But the practice of interviewing at least once a year ensure that I have developed and keep that knife sharp on being able to interview, because it's not just about coding. It's also about behavior. Hey, I need to go update my resume. Update your resume every 6 months to a year, and then mentally go through the process like you're interviewing. Hey, I need to practice this specific type of skill set because I recently got promoted to this type of level of engineer. And if I need to go apply for a job, I need to see if I still am, valued in the industry and I can showcase those skill sets in an interview. So when I say post-game, what I'm really talking about is continue to increase your frequency of getting ready for interviews at least once a year. Don't do more than that, especially once you have a job. But in terms of getting ready for job interviews now, these are what are my recommendations for your game day preparation. And I definitely appreciate you all listening in. This is an opportunity for you all to ask any questions that you have. I will turn back on the slide so we can at least showcase the members of the Career Center. But definitely the floor is you all in terms of the questions you may have. Kevin, do we have anything that came out?
Not really. Just my initial question that I asked at the beginning.
All right, what was it?
So I have an interview coming up. I'm planning to schedule it like maybe 2 weeks out based on this this presentation. But when I was just, talking with the recruiter last night, they actually don't prefer Python as a programming or an interview language, which kind of, I know. They prefer C#, C++, C, and then I extended the idea of using Java because that's the language that I'm most familiar with. That's closest to those more statically typed languages. How do I approach this? It's been 2.5 years since I touched anything Java related. So
Yeah,
yeah, how do I approach this?
yeah, Kevin, this is a little difficult one because one of the practices that I've had in my work experiences, whenever you're evaluating a candidate, regardless of whatever the coding language is that we use at the office, we evaluate them in their most proficient coding language. So that's my practice. You are dealing with a situation where the company prefers you to have a specific skill set in the coding language, not something that you are most proficient in. This one's going to be a tough cookie because the quick skill that you need to develop is being able to take Python code that you've written and rewrite them in Java. Now, this is where you're saying, hey, how do I develop that skill set? That's how you develop the skill set like this. Because in Python, you do this, this, and this. Java, I do this, this, and that. And before you know it, now you learn Java. You all didn't know that I just gave you an opportunity to learn any programming languages, right? But just know it takes time for you to make that transition. But unfortunately, your situation is a little bit unusual in the norm in terms of evaluating engineers. Just take that with you. But one thing that I want you to do is also stand on it, right? It's like, I know I have the skill set. Don't feel like it's going to lower you in terms of your capabilities because I don't care what programming language you use. I'm looking for great engineers in my perspective. So best of luck with that, and definitely get on my calendar so we can chat some more about it.
Yeah, I definitely will. And I don't want to take up another question. I'll let the next person. But what open source projects are you contributing to?
Ooh, that is a really good question. So for
Because
me,
I just did Hacktoberfest and like that was crazy.
definitely. So for me, I'm going to, respectfully say I don't contribute to any open source project as of now. I've recently left Twitter, like I said, about less than a year ago, and I haven't actually been hitting at the keyboard as much as I used to. And all my code is all behind closed doors. I mean, Elon Musk owns it now. So, but I will be finding projects specifically around talking about system design, documenting ways for people to develop the skill sets around engineering, and then finding, in terms of what I want to contribute to, a library that I really like, and find ways to contribute to it. So that's one of the advice I usually give students and something that I'm going to be following.
All right. So
Next
we do.
question up.
Yeah, we have a hands up. So yeah, I'll clear the floor for Sure.
Hey, it's Jari, and thank you so much, Kevin. And also thank you, Bobby, for speaking for us today. I appreciate that. My question, earlier you mentioned how like important it is to make sure like doing like leak code, even if it's just like an easy problem like every day or something like that, just to keep your mind sharp and ready for next interview. But I did want to ask, in terms of importance, is it better to really delve into a project, like a personal project, or making sure you're staying on top of leak code?
That's a real good question. So, my professional opinion, and this is just my opinion, is that committing to projects showcase your skill sets as an engineer way farther than answering lead code questions. Unfortunately, our field evaluates engineers on lead code questions, right? Uh, the thing that I don't want you to get caught up in, and this is for everyone, is thinking that this is the way that you engineer once you start to work at a company, right? Little side note, some of the problems you're solving in leak code will never be problems you'll ever solve in the real world. And those are documented out there. But this is a rite of passage. This is the way you get into the game, and you have to put in the effort. Now, one thing that I want to give some advice on, especially when it comes to leak code, hacker ranks, or any of these questions out there. And this is something that I told a mentee this the other day, and she kind of like sat back and was like, I didn't know. But one of the ways that I practice leak code questions is sometimes I go look for the answer. I don't spend the hours and 2-3 hours to really dive as much as I need to. I need to see the answer. I need to see the solution. But then I'm not one of those that just implements the solution, say, hey, I'm done. Now I'm going to spend 2 or 3 hours to figure out how they came up with that answer so that I can generate that same answer. That's how I've been able to level up on understanding these string manipulation algorithms, tree, understanding that stuff at a different level, because our industry doesn't teach people to read code first. They say go write code. I like to teach people to read code. Go see how professionals do it. When I told you all like a project that I work on, I would go work on a library, because if you go look at their code base, it's killer, because their code is going to be distributed somewhere in the world. So they have to put even more effort to make it more Pythonic, more readable, more ingestible, more in a way that everybody can understand. And then you start to pick up new skills. So if you are focusing leak code, hacker rank, there's nothing wrong. And this is what I told the mentee, there's nothing wrong with you looking up the answer. That's what we do in these jobs daily. We just have to make sure you understand how they got to the answer. And then now you go and redo the exercise, or you go do an exercise very similar. And your next thing is, how do you get faster at solving this problem? Because you're going to be able to solve it. If you spend 2 weeks on it, and you all know that you can write 1,000 lines of code and somebody else can write the same code in 10 lines. Go and figure out how they wrote it in 10 lines, and then you become more efficient at what you do. That would be my advice on that. And definitely keep pushing. But that's the rite of passage into this industry. So ensure you're up in your game on being able to solve these type of problems.
I really appreciate that detailed answer. Like honestly, like hearing the like look at the answer and then like really try to like go back and like understand it. And then like of course still be able to solve the problems just by looking at it. But also doing that, it seems like it'll save a lot of time and like less mental energy.
Yeah.
So
and that's how AIs do it.
hey, you're right.
Any other questions? What we got up, Kevin?
So our next question is by Jasmine. How long is someone considered for a new grad role after finishing graduation?
Ooh, that's a little tough question for me. That probably be maybe a question for Kelsey in our career center. I couldn't really tell a difference if they are a new grad or if they've been on the sideline for a little longer before they actually get into the industry. I usually just evaluate based on the position, if it's an internship or full-time, but that might be a question more suited for the career center. Let me just say, the skill set you're developing, regardless of the time you get into the industry, just make sure you're applying for the job, the right job, right? So let's say that you graduated, you took 6 months off, you start ramping up and getting yourself ready for interviewing, and you apply for a senior position. You apply for a senior position, right? Or you apply for an internship position. You can definitely see the difference in how they will evaluate you. So just make sure you're applying for the right position. Actually, technically, I'm gonna take that feedback back. Actually, I want you to apply for every position. I actually want you to apply for even the VP of engineering position, because if they call you, that's their problem. All I'm saying is that don't limit yourself, but also take into consideration is when you do apply for a certain position, there's certain expectations, all right? And don't get set back if you're saying, hey, I'm just getting into the in the field of engineering, I applied for a senior job and they said no. Don't let that emotionally, affect you. It was a senior type of position, or it might be an entry level position you might be applying for. So sorry about the mix up in my feedback, but I caught myself. All right, what else? It looks like we got a few people raise their hand. Let's get one of those in, Kevin.
Yeah, so the next person would be Eunice.
Hi. So I'm currently doing the technical interview preparation, and sometimes I feel it can be kind of overwhelming knowing what to practice when there's such a plethora of topics that could be asked. So I guess from your experience, like how did you split up the different topics within a preparation period, maybe like within a couple of weeks, to lessen the chance that we don't encounter a problem type we haven't seen before?
Yeah, this one is this is actually difficult in our industry. Because if you think about how much tech you have to know, I mean, the spectrum is huge, right? Kevin was talking about he wants to code in Python, and they're asking him to code in C, C#, and C++. It's like imagine, right? So this is where, in terms of just me being comfortable with the skill sets I develop, I know they're going to be jobs that you really, really want, but it's going to show you, hey, there's a skill set that I didn't develop, right? Just be prepared to receive that feedback and understand, hey, I need to continue to iterate on this specific skill set. Now, how do you keep it generic enough? Or how do you know, actually, I roll it back. How do you know when you've checked the box on a specific skill set? When you start to solve problems and you already know the answer, and all it is that they're changing the words around. This is the same thing. All right, let me go knock this out. Guess what? You don't need to practice that no more. You just need to have that on the side as something that you need to maybe sharpen up with right before an interview or something like that, but you got it, right? If you start to see problems, it's like, man, this is the first time I saw this problem and they use this algorithm to solve it. Oh, there we go. Like, that's when you start to check off the box in terms of the skills that you're developing. What can I say in terms of, hey, make sure you do X, Y, Z? I can't, because companies have the spectrum so wide. Look at what Kevin has to deal with. Is just more or less becoming a proficient engineer and being, confident in your ability. And at the end of the day, if you run into a problem that you don't know, guess what? That's a new gem in my bag. They won't ever ask me that problem again. I won't be able to get it type stuff. And that's what I would recommend. So I don't have specific, like, study algorithms, make sure you do hash maps, or make sure you know big O notation to this level. Make sure you know these concepts. If you don't know them, they're going to, I mean, those are going to be the things they're going to ask you for and at least start to get familiarized with. But what you should focus on is the spectrum's wide. Just make sure that you are becoming proficient as an engineer so that you can switch from one language to the next. Or, hey, that was the one algorithm, but I can use a different one. Or you start to find new tricks by reading other people's code. When I thought I could have used these type of data structures where I could have used just this one hash map and it took care of everything type stuff. So that's the things that I would recommend focusing on rather than trying to get, all right, if I do this, this, and this, I'll get the job. It's tough to be able to tell you that. So that would be my feedback.
Awesome. So it would be kind of more like a gradual process through learning and putting in the effort rather than like a checklist of things and suddenly you're prepared. It's kind of like a process.
Correct.
Okay, awesome.
Well, so
I had sorry. Sorry. Is it okay if I ask a quick follow-up, or if not,
sure, go
for
ahead.
lack of time?
So we got about 5 more minutes left.
Okay. So you mentioned also self-assessing ourselves during that 2-week period. I guess in terms of how to go about that practically, is there any way we should go about identifying which areas we're weak in and which areas we're not, or which areas we're more proficient in?
That's a good question. So there was a brief mention at the beginning of the talk where I said, make sure you read the job description. That's your first assessment right there. Go through that job description. And what I've done, and this is something that I'd actually do to help my mind get ready for interviewing, is I start to highlight words that I'm not proficient at. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Oh, yep, I don't know how to do that. And they want me to interview. Guess what? This is my assessment, right? It's like, get ready for this at a minimum. The next job description may have totally different things. That's how you start to gauge where I have to dive even deeper. And as of late, I've really seen companies really try to give more details about the type of questions they're asking, right? So make sure you're reading the material they send you. Make sure you're doing your research. Your peer groups are going to open up and say, hey, they asked this type of question. Guess what? Now you know what you need to add to your list. That's how I start to do a self-assessment, is after I do that research. And then I say, yeah, this job description, there's only one thing I'm missing, system design. Oh, I haven't done that in a while. Let me go dive deeper into that. That's how I would do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Definitely.
All right. So next question is being rewarded because he has his camera on. Stefan, go for it.
Thank you. Hey, Bobby, how's it going? I know we connected a
Stefan?
couple weeks ago, regarding SRE. So I'm currently in an SRE role, started, few months ago. So like product support, a lot of monitoring. So, not necessarily, typical software engineering. So I was wondering, what's, since we're speaking about interviews here, for SRE roles, is there any type of like generic interview style, that, I don't know, if you're an interviewer that you've asked, people that you've brought on board. So I was wondering, if I can start sort of gearing up for that in the future if opportunity, when opportunities come.
Yeah, definitely. And what's going on, Stefan? It's nice to see you again. And this is actually a really, really good question. And it's a good point to bring up in terms of skill sets. Mostly our industry focuses on software engineering. There's so many other opportunities out there. One of those could be site reliability engineering, which is a skill set that I've really, spent a lot of years working on. Now, when you're asking like, how do you assess and evaluate site reliability engineering? Site reliability engineers is one of the skill sets that I usually look for is their ability to code. So everything that I talked about in terms of, hey, being able to solve these problems in a codified way is really leaning on the idea of one of the SRE practices, which is automating yourself out of a job. So if you can't write code, hey, at least you know there's going to be some challenges of that. So that's the software engineering side. Now, what you're asking is like the other side of the house that site reliability engineers usually have responsibility for, which is systems, DevOps, infrastructure, networking, and stuff like that. Now, when I assess engineers for those skill sets, I'm more or less really focusing on a topic that you may actually run into, other students may not, which is around system design. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but system design is where you're taking a practice of, hey, you wrote this application, but now we have to host it. But you have some requirements. It needs to accept 100,000 connections per second. It needs to be replicated in 3 different regions. The data needs to be copied for code storage. And guess what? We need to implement some type of asynchronous writing because the latency on the web page is a little too slow. Those are type of questions that site reliability engineers will run into specifically around system design, and definitely an area that I would say at least familiarize yourself in terms of technologies, design decisions, and really starting to being able to deconstruct an API from just one web server in a database into microservices and a larger infrastructure to be able to support those different type of scenarios. So I know it might be a little lengthy in terms of response, but definitely that would be a skill that I would emphasize for you to start to build some proficiency on.
Okay, I'll expand on that. I think currently where I'm at, I think the developers, I'm not sure if the senior developers take care of the design, but I'll see it, to expand my skill set there.
Thank you so much for the question. All right, Kevin, well, what we got going on next?
All right, so I think this is going to be our last question. Double checking. Yeah, I think this is our last question. From Sunny, how would you go about not being able to figure out the question during an interview?
That's, let me tell you. First of all, it happens. It happens to us all. I get stumped every time and I'd be like, yo, afterwards, I'm like, did my mind just blank? Because that sounds like something I know I could answer like this if I'm not under pressure. All right. But the real question is like when you're asked a question that you don't know the answer to, you're having difficulties kind of like really even getting something out. The first thing I usually go back to is first principle and problem solving is, first of all, letting the interviewer know that I might be taking us down a road that we don't need to go down, but I'm just letting you know that I'm stretching in terms of where I'm at, being able to answer this question. And that first line that I just used is a great example to let the other person know that, hey, I might not know the answer, but if I stumble upon it, I need to get some extra credit for it type stuff. But I also use that space to say, hey, let me take a problem and bring it back down to first principle. They're asking me to solve this problem that does, or tell me, what's the best rate of entry for the door? How many people can we get to come through the door? All right, what is the first thing you need to do? All right, we need to build something that we can count the door open and closing. All right, but how do you know when a person went through the door? All right, so we have to design something to say that a person went through the door so then I can collect that data. Like, think about the problem at the lowest possible point. what may happen is you start to build up and you say something, oh, actually it comes to mind, or you're going to showcase your skill set of solving problems when you don't know the answer. Now, let's say all of that is what you've done and you still stump. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I'm having a real difficult time answering this question. I can't really put my thoughts together to give you the results you're looking for, but I know if I spent an hour or two researching online, type stuff, or referencing our resources. I would do some Google search on this topic. I would look at Stack Overflow for this type of problem, and just finding ways to articulate your best attempt to solving this type of problem. And at the end of the day, if they still don't take that, hey, this is one that you have to put in your bag. Guess what? I'm gonna take this one. If they ever ask me that question again, I'm gonna make sure I'll be able to answer it, and you move forward and you don't let it hold you back. So it's more or less starting off with first principle, bring the problem down as low as you can, working your way up. If that doesn't work, being straight up with the interviewer, like, hey, I'm really stretched here. And if that doesn't work, you chalk it up to the game and you take that with you as gems. So that would be my feedback. All right, it looks like we got one more hand, maybe just one last question that came in. Go ahead and open your mic.
Hey, Bobby. Well, first of all, thank you for hosting the meeting. I just wanted to get some advice. Like, say you're stuck in a situation where you just run into a bug and you can't really solve the problem, and with time being an issue, what would be the best way to handle it? Should you try a different approach? Or do you think it's just better to ask for help and say, hey, with time being an issue, I can't solve it right now? How would you handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely make sure I convey to the interviewer that I'm struggling. In the sense of, if you have nothing on the paper, the interviewer can see you ain't got nothing on the paper, right? So just let them know. And then what I would do is, one of the practices that I've seen really showcase engineering skills. And I'm about to tell you something about a person that got hired at Twitter and they failed the coding exercise, is that she was able to describe it in pseudocode, in comments, what the things that she would do next. And what that really gave me is like, the things that this candidate was missing were this building block and that building block, because if they had that, they got the answer to the problem. But the thing that I'm emphasizing is that she got it out. Some students and candidates don't get it out, don't say it, don't like articulate it in comments or writing in code. They just, but if you get it out, what happens is after we get a code review, let's say that you're doing an interview with me and we do a coding exercise. We're going to do it in a Google Doc. We're not going to use an IDE. And whatever you write, that's what I'm going to take back with you to evaluate, right? And whatever I take back, if you don't write, hey, we talked about this, or we didn't record this, I won't even know how you got down that road. I was like, nope, sorry, we can't. But if I read it, like, you know what? He was, I didn't see it during the interview. That's the thing that you all need to be just mindful of, is just getting your thoughts out, writing it in code and comments, writing pseudocode. Yeah, I don't know exactly how this thing worked, but I would do it this way. Those are the things that I have taken as, all right, they may not have been exposed to it. They don't have the experience, but they're showcasing the right skills, especially if they're an intern, especially if it's a new position, new grad. I mean, we don't expect you to know how all this stuff works. Come over here and let me help lift you up and motivate you and get you the right skill sets. So that's the thing that I would use as my way of getting through those challenging problems, and definitely walking away with the new question that nobody can ask me again and I won't go blank type stuff. So keep that in mind too. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, it looks like we are at the tail end of our conversation here. Let me just get the screen sharing again. Where's the right button? There we go. So this was our question and answer section. The next slide is just a big shout out to the career coach or career center. I'm sorry, career center here at CodePath, and definitely everybody that contributes to being a resource for you all to level up in these skill sets. And we really are here to support you during this time and even afterwards, because once you become a part of this family, you're always, and we're definitely resources that are always here to help and uplift and motivate. So keep doing what you're doing, keep pushing, and definitely reach out if you have any other questions. I will be sending a link of this meeting and definitely an opportunity for you to get on my calendar. I do offer a few sessions around mock interviewing or just general conversation like we had today in the question and answer section, but definitely giving you a different perspective than you may have had, especially with the feedback that I can give you after we do a code review. And I'll be like, yo, you were supposed to use a different data structure. Like, but just imagine the opportunity that you have. Come and chill with me. And definitely I'll continue to motivate you. But definitely, thank you all again for tuning in. We will have further sessions. Keep an eye out. Slack is your friend. That's where we'll be sending out more messages. And again, thank you all so much. Have a great, great day. All right.
Have
All
a
right.
good one.
All right.